our interview, if that's okay too.
Sure.
Okay. Let me announce it that we have started. And okay. Sorry for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, let me check it if everything is working correctly. Okay. Let's. Yeah, it seems so.
Cool.
It seems so, yeah. Okay. I'm not sure if there will be any questions, by the way, at the end of the interview, because, like I said, it's early morning at my place. But if there will be, I always let people ask questions. So if you are down to that, they can also
Yeah.
ask.
No, of course.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
ladies and gentlemen, let us know if we can start. I hope that everyone woke up as well with us. And yeah, let us know. Let us know if we can start. Hölgyek, urak, üdvözletem mindenkinek. Tudassátok velünk, hogyha kezdhetünk, és jó a videó és audio minőség is. Let us know if the video and audio quality is good. There is no lag. Neither on our side. Jó minden? Okay. Okay, they're saying everything is fine. Let me know if you can start.
Excellent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Sweet.
So welcome everyone in the very new episode of my Dev Live show. I'm today joined with the creator of the game called War of the Western Deep and also the creator of the comic called Beyond the Western Deep. I'm very thankful and very honored that you joined us for today's episode. It's early in the morning, but we woke up. Your place is late night, my place is early in the morning, but we connected together with the journey of video games, and I'm very thankful for that. And yeah, like I'm always saying, let's start with a little bit of introduction. So please introduce yourself for us.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Alex Kain. I am the studio head of Sunsgrove Studios. We're working on an adventure game with a little bit of combat called War of the Western Deep. I have also been writing this comic Beyond the Western Deep for about over 12 years now. It's kind of wild. I'm also a game writer by trade. I've been designing and writing for games since 2007.
I see. Okay, thank you for that. So my question before I will go way deeper into my original questions that I wanted to ask, which was first? So which came first for you to make? Like, was it the comic or was it the game? It's very interesting for me.
The comic, yeah, that's a great question. The comic did come first.
Okay.
I actually started working on it even before I got into got into games. Like
I see.
we were the creator Rachel Bennett or the co-creator and artist of the series Rachel Bennett and I were actually both still in college when we started throwing around the original ideas for the story. And over time, it materialized into a comic, and we started publishing pages. A few years into our respective careers. So it was around 2012, I think the first page went up. We'd both been working on it for a little while. We tried pitching it to a couple of comic publishers. We did get picked up by a comic publisher later. That's a whole story that I can tell at a different point when I'm not summing things up. But the game came about many, many years after, just because, we were looking for new ways to build out the world. I was excited to try my hand at actually developing a game from scratch myself. And we had this idea to make a game that looked like the comic using classic hand animated stylings, very similar to, Don Bluth or Walt Disney. And that became the impetus for the game and how the game looks.
I see. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so my first question would be, if it comes to the video game industry and video games in general, what was your very first contact with video games as a player? If you remember those times and memories of your life.
I mean, that's for people of my generation. I feel that it's almost like cheating to say I played Super Mario Brothers on a Nintendo in my in my parents' bedroom where they had the TV with the NES hookup. But that is literally how it went down. They bought a Nintendo. We had Tetris and we had Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt because it was the double cartridge. And I played so much Mario Brothers, and we had a couple of games after that. We got Legend of Zelda 1 and 2, Excite Bike, and Blades of Steel, and um, that was my first interaction with games. But it wasn't until many, many years later when I was playing Super Nintendo games that had more fully featured stories that I actually thought I could do it as a career.
I see. I see. And have you like always had this dream of making games, by the way, from your early young age? How do you feel
I
about
mean, there
that?
was a period of time where I wanted to be maybe an astronaut or
We all do that, right, as kids?
exactly be an astronaut, or like I was very good at debate in school. So my parents like, oh, you could be a lawyer and make lots of money, and I was like, no, I want
That's boring.
to that is so boring. And I humored them for a little bit, and I took I signed up to study for the LSAT, which is the you know you take a test to determine your acuity
I see.
for legalese, and I hated it so much that I actually started to migrate into game design and writing fairly early on. But it was not until like I never thought that you could do games as a career. I thought that you needed to understand complex mathematics and engineering. All I thought that all the games were made in Japan. That was something and they were only localized into English. Obviously, we have a much greater understanding now from even the youngest age that games are a global phenomenon, and even
True,
that
true.
early on, they were. I was just young and silly, and there wasn't an internet for me to learn all this stuff. There were really just like a couple of gaming magazines that I really liked that were basically mouthpieces for various marketing departments and game publishers. Um, I still miss them though. I still have a whole bunch of Nintendo
I
Powers down
still miss
over here.
those magazines. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a whole bunch of them
Yeah,
down
the
there.
industry really,
Um,
really changed in that way as well.
it really did. But it wasn't until the Super Nintendo and Final Fantasy II, in particular, Final Fantasy IV, everywhere else, where I understood that games have stories and stories have writers. And the way that you write a game story is intrinsically different from how you write a story in other media, and it needs to interplay with the gameplay mechanics. And
True, true, true.
the moment that I played that, I was absolutely fascinated with the whole idea of storytelling through games, and that led to a whole journey where I didn't think I was good enough to be a games writer, so I got into game design, and I enjoyed game design quite a bit, but I actually enjoyed writing more, and there was a whole lot of time spent early in my career where I wrestled with those two things. Um, but ultimately, the narrative side won out, and I'd say that I'm I definitely identify more as a games writer and a narrative designer than just a straight up game designer these days.
I see, I see. And what do you think could cause you like having this self doubt of like not being enough for writing, as you said? Like what could cause that effect? Like,
I think that, and I mean, this is the reality of the case is that game writers are a vanishingly small part of the machine that is game development.
I see.
For a team of artists and engineers and designers, you will
But
have
they
a
are
small
important
team
as well,
of game
right?
writers.
So story is important in games, right? So
Absolutely, absolutely. And so the way that I sort of thought of it, um, you know, not not really being having too big a head of it, I thought there's no possible way that I am good enough to be on a team
I see.
of like 3 or 4 people working on a game story. Like there in the whole world, there must be better people to do that than me.
I see.
Um, and that self doubt really just sort of carried me through a lot of my early game design career. I did not think that I was good enough to do that. So it wasn't really until I started to do it when the stakes were a lot lower. Uh, and I was a game designer by trade, and then I started doing a little bit of story to help out on some of the games that we were working on, and I started taking on side projects for indie games. After I had a chance to cut my teeth on a couple of smaller mobile game stories, um, that I really realized that I did enjoy writing for games much more than I did, working in spreadsheets, designing, and balancing mechanics and things like that. Uh, the narrative really took over for me, and I knew that that's what I really wanted to spend my career working.
I see. And it's interesting that you're saying it's very true what you have just said, that with practice, self doubts like fades away, right? So
Mm-hmm.
really finding your passion and you can really do it. Yeah, I believe in that. So
Yeah.
okay. So how do you feel about like where you're it will be a more personal question and I hope that you don't won't mind it. So how do you feel about like your parents and close friends? Were they supportive about your decision that you would like to go into the video game industry as a game designer and a writer as well? How do you
Yeah,
feel
my
about
parents
them?
were my parents were surprisingly very supportive
Okay.
of the idea. I think there was a school project that we had to do. Well, we didn't have to do it, but I volunteered for it in my senior year of high school. And it was a sort of independent study project where I got to spend, you know, a period a period or two every week, putting together a large scale project that I would then present to a public, group at the end of the semester. And the project that I selected was to go into detail about how games are designed and created, because at that time, no one really had an idea. Like the public sphere was not really aware of how it worked. You could learn how games were made if you really went into it, but it wasn't inherent. Like there wasn't really it wasn't really in the zeitgeist that, when people talk about movies, I think a lot of people have a natural understanding that, like, movies have directors and
True,
writers, and
true,
there are
true,
people who work
true.
the lights, and there are grips, and things like that. And I don't think for games people really, like my parents certainly didn't really understand how that process worked. So when I did this presentation, my parents were in the audience, along with a lot of teachers and fellow students, and I got to talk through the process of making the game. And the feedback that I got from my parents was that they finally understood why it was I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and that was a very validating moment for me. And I was able to then, from that point, go to college and study not game development exactly. I think that they wanted me to get into game development because that's what I wanted to do. But I think they were also aware that if I wasn't able to secure one of these very few jobs that existed for games, that I should have a fallback plan just in case. And so I went into college for communications, which, I studied some game development stuff, but I also studied things like TV, film, radio,
I see.
um, a little bit of like 3D graphics, and all that stuff. And that honestly just helped, give me a greater appreciation for all the various tools that go into media creation. And help me with things like video editing and things like that for trailers that we cut, or Kickstarter pitch videos that we do, things like that. So that ultimately ended up all helping. But yeah, my parents were hugely supportive, and my friends, they some of them, I think, really understood what it was I wanted to do. Some of them were like, I don't understand why you want to play games for a living. I'm like, it's not playing games, man. It is it,
Grow up.
yeah, it's not like a chef eats food all the time. There's a whole different side of it. Someone wants to get into music production, they don't listen to music all the time. It's a different side of it. So yeah, it took a little. I think some friends were more understanding than others, but I still talk to a lot of them to this day, and they're all just super psyched to chat about some of the stuff that I'm working on, and I don't think any of them really play the games that I work on. But I love just
They
catching up with
should,
them. And
right? They should.
yeah, it's everyone's got their own thing. Like
Yeah,
I'm not
true, true,
gonna.
true, true, true.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what
Everyone's
friends
got
are
their own thing.
for, right? I guess say so.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay, okay. I love that story.
yeah.
Do you feel like, by the way, it's important to have a supporting surrounding to be able to
It
go for your
I mean,
dreams?
I could lie and say that it's like the only thing that matters is that you believe in yourself. But man, having other people there supporting you makes it so much easier.
True, true.
But not everyone has that support network. Like there are a lot of people out there who do not have that support network, and I feel for them. I really do. Like you know, as I said earlier in our conversation, I had crippling self doubt about lots of things. If I didn't have a support network, I very well could see myself as like a clerk in some law office somewhere, like hating what I do, or like writing, as
Or
like a
might be a
third
good
string,
lawyer, right?
you know.
That could also be the case. Who
Yeah,
knows?
I who knows? Maybe I could have in some alternate universe been a fantastic lawyer, and instead of renting a house, I would
True, true,
own
true.
a palatial estate on a tropical island.
Yeah, true.
But I can't imagine enjoying the work that I do anymore than I do right now. Like that's why people make games. They don't do it for fame and fortune. They do it
True,
because
true,
they
very
enjoy
true,
doing
very
it.
true. Yeah, I agree with you. Totally 100%. Yeah, yeah. Okay. And so, as for your comic, you mentioned that it influenced your game, but why did it took like so many years, like you mentioned, to transition from your comic making your own game? Like, how do you feel about that?
I work a lot of different side projects. I have a day job. When we started the comic, I was working as a designer for a mobile studio called Venom Entertainment on the East Coast of the United States.
I see.
And then after that, I did a lot of contract work, and then I started work at ArenaNet in 2017. Um, but all throughout that work, and I mean, those are like 9 to 5 game jobs, which are more like, a couple hours before and a couple hours after
I see.
sometimes. You'll work long hours in game development, but I would still take on indie side contracts. I would still write for other people's games. I would still go out there and try to learn more about how to write for games. And I spent a lot of time working on other people's games. Most of my career was working on other people's games, and still is. Like I still work at ArenaNet, and I work on the Guild Wars franchise, and I'm still working out with the team, on games. And at some point, during the early days of the pandemic, I think I got really anxious about making something myself from the ground up. Um,
Like you
you know,
always wanted to
at,
do that, right? So
yeah, and it's not like I had this dream of like, man, one of these days I'm going to make a game and no one's going to tell me what I can or can't do. It's like it's not really like that. It's more I like making things. That's why I do what I do.
to have
There's
your
something,
creative freedom and vision, right? Puts to the table.
yeah. And I think it goes beyond that. I think that you don't get into games writing unless you are comfortable in a group and like having that sort of back and forth, which is kind of how the comic works. It's like Rachel and I collaborate on the comic the same way that in a game I collaborate with designers and artists to generate story based on gameplay mechanics. Um, for the game, for War of the Western Deep, it went beyond that. I think it was this understanding that there was a kind of game that I wanted to play as a player, not even as a professional developer or writer of games. There was a game that I wanted to play, and nobody was making it, and I just felt that if I did not make this game,
Nobody will.
nobody
Yeah.
nobody would make it, and it was a very potent sort of combination of like, boy, like no one is making really nice hand drawn, hand animated things that look like classic Don Bluth films with the structure of an open world quest for glory adventure game with very well designed combat uh, and light RPG stats. Like it is this really eclectic combination of things that I really wanted to do, and no one was doing it, and no one is doing it now. And if some mystery game ships a month before we ship War of the Western Deep, and it does everything that I hoped that it would do, I would still play it. I'd still be happy. But I think that's the thing is that like no one is doing that, and based on the publishers that we've talked to, it's like the reason no one's doing it is because it's a weird combination of things that publishers are not very interested in funding right now. But that's all the more reason I think for us to make it. Like we just did PAX West, last August, September, um, and we had a group around our booth that was easily over a dozen deep regularly of people just like stopping and looking at the booth and stopping to play it, and they're all sort of pulled into it and they're all trying to figure out what it is, and that was fascinating. Like we had PAX staff coming by telling us that we needed to manage our line better because we had too many people blocking the path. And that to me is like, yeah, and that to me is like, if I'm a game publisher, I want to look at that and I want to say like, oh, like maybe there's something here that we did not anticipate that players wanted.
True.
But I think that the way there is a glut in games coming out right now. There are so many coming out that no one can keep track of them all. And
it's very hard to market as well, right? Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
No, absolutely. I have a tendency to just like talk and talk and talk.
No, so it's okay. It's okay. I love that. No, it just was an addition for you. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, to absolutely.
Those games. Yeah,
it is. Adventure games by their very nature are a very niche category of games. But I think that there was a time when there was nothing but adventure games. That was like the hot new thing. Is like. Yeah, like adventure games were the big thing, and like Sierra was out there like treating them like they were films and blockbusters. And I think that because they are so universal and there are so many things that you can bolt onto them, just to sort of pigeonhole them as adventures doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Like Quest for Glory and King's Quest could not be more different from a gameplay standpoint. You are, technically moving 2D sprites around and talking to NPCs and solving puzzles, but there is a whole like RPG element and combat to Quest for Glory, and you've got the multiple playthroughs with the different, character classes. And King's Quest is, very obtuse and has very strange puzzle design that I could never really get my head around. But it was family friendly, and that was the thing, is that like everyone in the family could play a King's Quest game.
True.
So anyway, yeah. So it's been an interesting ride, I'll say.
Yeah, and people love those games for their stories as well, right? So they always like wanted to get through the puzzles, even if some of them like were like non-logical or illogical. But they still like wanted to go through those puzzles to enjoy the story and get forward. Yeah, so that's why we remember those games as golden age of the video game industry and video game era. We all
the puzzles were something else. Some of them were great, a lot of them weren't so great.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So throughout the development journey of your games and your recent game that you're working on now, how have you changed as a person in other territories of your life? How do you feel about it?
I think that working with a team, so War of the Western Deep has a, we're not like a studio, like a typical studio. We've got, part-time sort of volunteers, who work at other studios. Who contribute to the project in their spare time. I think that managing that team and trying to figure out the priorities for the things that we should be working on, trying to make those decisions that tangibly affect how the game looks or how the game plays. I've never had to do that before. It's always been someone else's responsibility. I've always been, terrified of making the wrong decision. Again, crippling self doubt. But being put in that position of responsibility and needing to make those hard choices and decide, like, do we use mouse control or do we make a controller? Oh
Scary, right?
man,
It's scary decisions.
it's scary. Like, some of them you can't walk back. It's like,
True, true, true.
you know, it's like, oh, like, do we, what perspective do we do the combat in? Well, we just spent all this money on these animations for combat at a very particular point of view, and we cannot change that anymore
True, true, true.
without spending a lot of money. So we are locked in. Um, those are the kinds of decisions that I don't think I would have been able to make 4 or 5 years ago. I don't think that I would have
I see.
felt like I was in a position to do that. I think that, um, it took a couple of years and a couple of failed prototypes, and just sort of working through stuff and learning the limitations of what I can do, and accepting those limitations, and knowing that I can't do everything myself. Um, that I think helped me grow into the kind of person that could make a game like this.
I
Like, I
see.
know
I
that
see.
some indie developers can do all the art and they can do all the programming, they can do all the music, they can do all the narrative. I think that's great. I would love to be able to do that. I know that I can't. So, Rachel as our art director, Knights of the Light Table as our animators, Mike Smith as our technical director, Nolan Markey as our composer. These are tasks that I could do badly, very, very badly, but I would rather a professional do them very, very well. And so I think, having that humility to be able to work with other people and know that you can't do everything yourself is very important. And that's how you get better games.
I see. I see. By the way, what helped you like go with your vision and not sacrificing your freedom of creative choices with your game? Because I feel like, especially nowadays, for bigger companies and indie studios as well, we see this change where like developers have to like sacrifice sometimes their own vision because they are afraid that the public won't like the unique ideas, right? Especially in AAA
Mm-hmm.
industry, video games. I feel like a lot of companies are like afraid to release unique ideas because the public is like nowadays a very toxic trend gamer culture where they like cancel every new unique game. So how do you feel about that? What helped you go straight with your vision and not having those sacrifices of taking or cutting out your unique visions with your game?
It's always about balancing risk.
Okay.
It sounds kind of sterile, but it really is about balancing risk. So, you know, when I pitch War of the Western Deep, and I say that it's an adventure game with combat and hand drawn animation, um, that's a risky proposition. And I understand that that's a tall order for any publisher to get behind. But, the team believes in the idea. And every once in a while, we're validated because we put it in front of people and people will go, this looks very cool. This looks different from everything that I've seen. And that's how we look at it too. Is like, we just keep gut checking. It's like, okay, does this look like anything else? Does this play like anything else? No, it really doesn't. Okay, we're still on the right track. Um, we have been personally investing in it with our time and our money for years at this point. 2 years, I think, is the official sort of start date, but I spent a lot more time before that learning Unity and, doing failed tutorials and things like that. Um, but when the stakes get higher and more people's jobs are at risk, that is where you try to mitigate more risk. That's where you get like, you know what, like maybe we don't need this mechanic, or maybe we should, you know, add a skill tree that everyone understands how it works. You know, the riskiest mechanic that you'll see is like, we can add like, what if our open world map wasn't as big and it was more detailed and we had like haiku puzzles that you could do. Like that's like, those are cool ideas that, honestly, I'm surprised make it all the way through production. It's like Ghost of Tsushima is a great example of like, you know, Sucker Punch is a relatively small studio considering the size and scale and scope,
True, 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 true.
importance of the games that they make. Because we are all on the Sunsgrove Studios team, we all have our own day jobs. We all moonlight on this project. We all put in our own time and money. We can afford to do the things that we want to do because the risk is comparatively low. It's like, what's the worst that could happen? Well, I don't know, Unity does something stupid and we can't use their engine anymore. And, there's so much sunk into using that engine that like okay, well, there's nothing we can do. It's all lost. But it's not really like,
True.
we've proven already that we can put together a playable demo,
True, true, true.
that these mechanics work. So that's how we've been able to do it. It's not like we've gone all in. It's not like we've mortgaged our house. It's not like we have all of our finances on the line. We have consciously decided to mitigate risk by continuing to work our day jobs and to self-fund as long as we can. So that's how we're able to make the game that we want.
I see. Do you believe, by the way, if those developers or any developers at all will have like ultimate funding for their games, they should, or they do not have to, or wouldn't have to sacrifice, or for that, their visions of their games? Do you believe in that?
Um,
Would
do
that
I
help?
think
Would
that,
that help in any other
I
way?
mean, this is the problem that I think a lot of game developers with large budgets run into, is that game development is best when it is defined by constraints. That is where the best, I think, games come from, is when you are in a box and you need to do the most interesting
To
things
get
inside that
out of their,
box.
yeah,
Yeah, it's not even to get out of the box. It's to find the most fun in the box. So like,
okay.
you know,
That's an
in the
interesting
games that we
perspective, by the way. Okay.
in the games that we played growing up, there were massive technical constraints that defined entire
True, true, true,
aesthetic and
true,
gameplay
true, true,
features.
true, true, true.
The Nintendo 64 was built entirely around the idea of a single analog stick that you could move in 3D space, and now this was a new thing that was going to define all the games that you could play.
True.
In Silent Hill, because they could not render, uh, you know, uh, uh, draw distance, beyond like your, 2 feet in front of you, they had to concoct a narrative reason and a technical solution for why you couldn't see very far. And that gave us the fog, and that created the horror of Silent Hill. And that created things like, well, how do you know if there's an enemy near you if you can't see them? Well, let's make an audio component. Let's add the radio. And nowadays, right, if someone was making a horror game, they would not fall into that constraint. They would have to concoct that constraint on themselves. So I think that if you had an unlimited budget and you could make anything that you want, the only limitations that you have are the ones that you set for yourselves. And I think that a lot of people don't necessarily do that because, why should I be constrained? I have an unlimited budget. I can do whatever I want.
True,
Um,
true, true.
because we don't have an unlimited budget, and because we are constrained by many things, including our team size and the scale that we're operating on, we had to figure out, if we want to make a 2D animated game, there are very few ways that you can do that and also have like an open world and combat and things like that. Is it like a Link to the Past, where it's like overhead kind of view and you're scrolling around a large 2D map? Is it like Quest for Glory, where you have these hand painted scenes and you're navigating between scenes that you load in? Is combat a separate scene with a separate perspective? Do you keep it on the same map, like Sea of Stars or Chrono Trigger? Those are the things that we needed to answer, because those were very clear constraints. And I think that if we had an unlimited budget, I don't know what we honestly at this point. I think because we established the constraints for ourselves. If we had an unlimited budget to make War of the Western Deep, I think all we do is just give Knights of the Light Table a bunch of money to do as many cool animations as they could for all the characters. And give a whole bunch of money to Rachel to do like the prettiest backgrounds that we could possibly do. And pay Nolan to get the London Symphony Orchestra to book Abbey Road Studios and do like 2 hour long musical score. Like these are the things that I get excited about. It's not you know other stuff. So
I see. I see. Thank you for that, by the way. Thank you for your honesty for these more
yeah,
personal questions. Thank you.
no, of course, of course.
Okay, so I believe that all of us creators who create our own crafts, we always intend to put our inner self, our experiences, memories, emotional feelings into our
Mm-hmm.
creations. Is it true for you as well?
To some extent, yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of writers, and not just writers, but like people who make things, are inspired by their past and things around them, and the family members and people that they know. As a writer, it's very easy to look at real people that you know and take inspiration from them, or real situations and take inspiration from them. Um, there are elements of myself that are in a lot of characters that I write. There are elements of my friends in a lot of characters that I write. There's a certain like pattern to how certain characters talk that's based on someone that I know or have known growing up. Um, the main character of Beyond the Western Deep, starts with crippling self doubt because at that time, in my life as I was starting that, I also had crippling self doubt to the point where I didn't think I was really capable of doing anything professionally. So there are those things that you just sort of work into it, and I think that's a very common thing for people to do. Um, you pull from what you know. They say write
True,
what you
true,
know.
true, 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 true. And it's also like the vision, right? Not like influenced by other people's craft, but having your own stories put into your own game and comic, right? So it's just
Yeah,
more
that's certainly part of it.
more real, we could
They,
say so.
yeah, I mean they say you stand on the shoulders of giants, and I think that goes for literary inspirations too. Like I love William Goldman and screenwriters. Um, well, like William Goldman, Aaron Sorkin, but they obviously have a very unique style that you really cannot ape without having it sound very much like them. And so you have to find your own voice, and you have to find the things about the way that your favorite writers will write, and you need to learn about yourself in the process, and what are the
True,
things
true,
about
true.
your writing style that come out, that as a former narrative director said, uh, there were people who were trying to hide references to like pop culture in a game that we were working on, and he said, you shouldn't reference other people. Other people should be referencing you. And I thought that was a brilliant piece of advice that I still try to maintain to this day.
I see. I see. Okay. So with your game, by the way, what was the goal with the length and the difficulty settings as well? If you
Yeah, I
could talk
think
about that.
yeah, I think people have expectations for how long a game should be. An adventure game in particular, I think, needs to tell a good story front to back. Don't leave it on a cliffhanger. And if you do have a cliffhanger, make sure you resolve your main story first. And just based on all the puzzles and the combat and the exploration, thinking probably like 8 to 10 hours is
Okay.
what we're going to be aiming for. Um, and I think that for the price point that we're targeting, and I mean, all of this is speculative because we're so still relatively early in development, but that like 24.99 USD kind of area, the 20 to 25 price point for 8 to 10 hours of gameplay with a bespoke hand animated style. Not a lot of you know you know running around and doing fetch questy stuff, like narrative content with full voiceover, an original musical score, all that stuff. I think accumulates to a full, satisfying experience. I don't think a game should overstay its welcome. I also don't think that a game should be an hour long and cost $25. Like there's no market for that. Um, I think that people have a greater appreciation for a shorter game with a better experience now. Like we lived through the Order 1886, where that game, had a main story that was like 7 8 hours long, um, with no multiplayer, and it got absolutely just savaged by reviewers saying that like the value proposition wasn't there. I don't agree with that premise. Like I would pay, 50 $60 for, a really really cool,
Me too. Yeah, yeah,
8 to 10 hour
yeah.
game
Me
that like
too.
I
Yeah,
felt,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I can, and I have, like,
yeah,
Game
that's the
Pass
point,
movie
right?
for that
So if
too.
people can, they should not be complaining. And I think that, sorry for again interrupting you, but I feel
No, of
like those
course.
those people who are mostly complaining are the ones who might not have the money, right? So and they
Hmm.
savage these games and have these toxic and cruel opinions about games since they do not have the money for buying it. But okay, if you don't have the money for it, don't buy it. But it's not a bad game, right? And I think also
Yeah.
like the problem with the video game industry nowadays is, especially from player perspective, is that I think that like having a price for a video game is not a similar value for what it contains. So you cannot judge a game by its price. For me, it's like
Hmm.
so unreal to see all these people like judging a game by its price, right? So it's like,
Hmm.
if I remember myself as a kid, I don't know, helping my mother or my family for a small amount of money, to collect and to save for a video game per month. I remember those
Hmm.
video games were like expensive at those times too, and people still complain that
Yeah.
games are expensive. So it was always like an, we could say, expensive hobby, of course. But if you like have a daily job or a normal job, you can pay for those games, right? You just have to like be more picky, I guess, if you are like not billionaire, or we could say so. But yeah, I don't agree with those people, like you said, and I agree with you on that point. That, for example, I loved the game Order, and I remember myself streaming it and playing it, and people complained
Hmm.
about the price again, and
Yeah.
it was so annoying,
Yeah.
right? That I'm enjoying my game for my own money that I made, right, or got
Hmm.
from my job, and they are complaining about the price because they cannot afford it, and I was like telling them that, hey, you should like have a normal job or money and try it out. And it also had a demo, right? So nowadays all games have a demo, so you can try it out to see if it's fitting your play style or
Yeah.
liking.
And I
And
mean, even if they don't, like, here's the thing that, I continually sort of think about when it comes to the Order, is that if that team had killed themselves to add a multiplayer mode that nobody was going to play. Because I mean, a lot of those games in that era had throwaway multiplayer modes that were just there, to, pad out the value proposition, to make it seem like it was that you were getting a better value for your dollar. Um, I don't think that that would have, I think that if it had a multiplayer mode that no one actually played, would it have been as hated on for its length? Like, I
I'm
think
not
that,
sure.
would a lot of people had like rationalized, like, well, it's got like an 8 to 10 hour campaign, but it
I
does have that multiplayer mode. So, but they'll never play it, right? So
Yeah, true,
would it have been
true,
the same? We'll never know.
true.
Um, so yeah, that's tricky. But I mean, also, like, I can't speak for you, but I grew up in a time when you never knew the quality of the game that you were getting. It could have been absolute, garbage. Um, Games these days very rarely are absolute garbage, to the extent that, like, a Nintendo game that was very poorly developed was garbage. Um, you could get, when I was growing up, Mega Man 2, or you could get Bugs Bunny's Birthday Blowout, and the quality of those games is just vastly different. I had a game called like Flying Dragon, the Seven Scrolls or something, and like I didn't know what I didn't know what I was doing. Like, like, was it? I still to this day like don't even know if it was a good game or not. Like, it was a game and you played it. because it was the one game that you got for the next like 6 months. Because that was how gaming back then kind of worked, is that you got like a game and you played it for 6 months, and if it was good or bad, it didn't matter. You had like Stockholm syndrome for whatever game that you had. But these days it really isn't that bad. And games were also very expensive back then. Like it just with inflation being how it is, like
True, true, true,
you
true,
know,
true. People forget it,
like
right? Like people say it
yeah,
was way cheaper, but no, like they weren't. I
no,
remember like PlayStation 1 and 2 games were like very expensive, right? For
yeah, like Chrono, like there were like chip shortages for Super
exactly.
Nintendo games. Like I remember like Chrono Trigger cost like $100 or something. It was like
Exactly,
it was
exactly.
ridiculous. Yeah,
Exactly, yeah. And the
yeah,
salaries
it was
were
it was
way
rough.
lower back then, so I never understood these
It
complaints
was
of,
rough.
of
All
people.
all
Yeah.
all, all, all that is to say is that like you know we as gamers have it great now.
True,
There are
true.
so many games for us to play, and you know people like games, they don't like games. There's content in the games they like, there's content in the games they don't like. There's so much choice out there, and now with indie gaming being what it is, it's just absolutely all over the place. Like you can find a game experience that caters to pretty much any concept or vision that you want to
True,
experience.
true, true.
um, and I think that it's almost like too much of a good thing. Like the monkey paw, like kind of is like, I wish that there were infinite games, and then the monkey paw like closed its digit, and now we have you know uh, hundreds of games coming out every day on
True,
Steam, and like there's no turning off the spigot at this point. Um,
true. And it's
and
very easy to miss rare gems, right? So
it is like Animal Well came out, and it looks absolutely phenomenal. I haven't had time to play it. Like
yeah,
it's crazy.
yeah.
But yeah, it's not the only game I haven't had time to play.
True,
So
true, true,
go
true.
figure.
And I feel like what you were just saying and we were talking about is also connected to the topic that we talked about at the beginning of our interview, when you stated that you miss the magazines of video about video games, and I miss too, because I feel like back then we had like this very good media outlets who were pushing us the all positive perspective on informations about video games. And as I was a
Mm.
journalist myself in the video game industry here in Hungary, I feel
Mm.
like it changed over the past 10 years, because it's more now that it's based on like influencers opinions and YouTubers opinions, and
Mm-hmm.
those people sometimes like very harsh with their opinions and can change the industry for the worse. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people are like these sheep-minded people who are players of in the video game industry, and they follow these people. Like if there is like a very negative opinion about, even if it's a good game, and their
Mm-hmm.
favorite streamer or YouTuber says it, that okay, don't buy it, they will do that and they won't buy it, because like they respect that people's opinion. And I feel like that's the real problem nowadays, that the media changed so much and people went from like respecting those people who really understood games and
Mm-hmm.
know how to write about games. Now it's just random people all over the internet, writing random stuff and making random videos about video games, because now everyone has this ability to make content
Mm-hmm.
about video games. And it's bad in my opinion, because you have all the playthroughs as well. Like it sucks. Like you should try out yourself. Like I
Yeah.
know myself that I love streaming, for example, story games as well, but I always say this, that if my audience want to try out, don't watch my stream, rather play
Mm-hmm.
it and try it out and buy it, because you will enjoy your time with it, and don't watch it because it's not the same experience. And I feel like that's the
Yeah.
problem these days, that uh, as a video game journalist I quit a lot of companies here in Hungary, because I feel like nowadays the video game journalism industry is also like a very corrupt thing, because like a lot of like these outlets are based on the Metacritic scores, and if some games are hated, they will hate it too, right? So I always bring up this example of mine, the game called Gollum, if you know that, in the Lord of the Rings
Mm-hmm.
universe.
Yep.
I love that
Mm-hmm.
game,
Mm.
and I gave it like an 8 or 7 out of 10, and they underscored me. I wrote an article about loving the game and realizing the story connected really with the Lord of the Ring universe. and
Mm-hmm.
and my company which I worked for, and my boss told me that you can't score this game for 7 out of 10 because it's a 2 out of 10, with everyone's
Mm.
opinion.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah.
and it's a very bad situation because like you cannot have your more objective perspective that like you could have back then, understanding
Mhm.
games why you love that game for what it is. Because for example, Gollum never wanted to be like a gameplay oriented or gameplay heavy game, right? It was a
Mhm.
story based game which all almost like has a 30 plus story, right? And it was very funny when I checked all these profiles, for example, for all the biggest like video game journalists who made a review about the game. They never even played that game. Or they had one achievement. They haven't even played it through. So they were reviewing it like I said it before, based on Metacritic scores. And it's bad because like I remember myself reading the Twitter post from the developers that they were ashamed that they had to put out this bad game, which was considered by a lot of people bad game, but it wasn't.
Hmm.
And it sucks to see that like all those developers have to say sorry for the players, but they shouldn't, right? In my opinion, at least,
Yeah, I mean, I think
because
that
it's not a bad game. But people, if that's what pisses me off all the time. That if a lot of people are saying it's a bad game and you are enjoying it, then you are stupid. And
I think the
why? Like,
thing,
why?
yeah, I mean, I think that the thing that working in games for as long as I have sort of gets you is a wisdom that nobody wants to make a bad game,
True,
and
true.
you
That's the
you
point,
go
right?
into it, yeah, and you go into it with high expectations. And Gollum's a great example. Like, you look at the behind the scenes videos of them working on it, like they would go into the office and they would work on this game,
True.
and they thought that they were working on something that was really really cool, and they were excited to put it out there. But one of my favorite games of all time is a game that came out in 1998 called Trespasser, Jurassic Park. Uh, it was a very ambitious first person shooter exploration game that came out on PCs right when the transition between hardware and software acceleration was happening, or software and hardware acceleration was happening. Um, and a guy named Seamus Blackley was the lead on it. He would go on to co-invent the Xbox console. But the thing is that there are very ambitious games, and I think Gollum is one of those, because the team at Daedalic uh, was not comfortable and didn't have a lot of experience working in 3D stealth adventure games. Like, that was a
True,
that was
true.
a whole new thing for them. Same with like Trespasser. It was a physics based open world game at a time when the most complex first person shooter was Half Life, and that means that objectively the game is not good based on the metrics that are available to a lot of people reviewing games. It's clunky. It doesn't feel as satisfying to play. Just because a game is objectively bad does not mean that people cannot enjoy it.
True.
Some of my favorite games are objectively bad games, like Trespasser, like um, Alone in the Dark, the 2006 reboot of Alone in the Dark is not a good game. Like, it is a clunky, over designed
Yeah, but
mishmash of
it really depends.
ideas.
So in my opinion, objective based criticism is really about like the perspective, right? What we are playing games for. If you're playing it
Yeah,
for the gameplay side, then yeah, it might be a bad game. But like I said, Gollum is not a gameplay based game. It's a story based game. Like, it has 30 plus
sure.
story, right? And that's what
Yeah.
people do not understand, that games should be respected what they are for. If it's a story based game, you cannot judge the gameplay, right? You can,
Mhm.
I mean, of course, but it's like not that what the developers wanted you to play for, right?
Yeah.
And
And
that's
there's
what
no
I
such thing
don't
as an
understand it. So
sure. And there's no such thing as a totally objective
true, true,
game
true,
review.
true,
Like,
true, true, true.
so the fact that you enjoyed Gollum and wanted to give it a 7 out of 10, like, I think that is a perspective that I think people should be aware of. It's like when Heaven's Gate came out in 1980, everyone objected. Like, everyone was saying it was the worst movie of all time. Um, and many years later, the Criterion Collection re-released it, and it became, like, they reevaluated, and actually this is one of the most impressive films of all time. Do I think that that's going to happen with Trespasser and Gollum? I don't think so. I think that we might reevaluate how we reviewed those games at the time. Like,
True, true,
Trespasser
true, 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 true,
Trespasser had
true,
that
true.
had that sort of happen too. Like I think a lot of people appreciate that Trespasser had really interesting ideas that it could not technically achieve at the time,
True.
like a big open world. Things like regenerating health and a 2-gun limit were reused in Halo
True.
a couple of years later, which is crazy cool. But yeah, I think that it's okay for games to not be great, and I think it's okay for people to like those games.
True.
The thing is, sort of getting back to your original point, though, which is that it feels like game journalism has changed, but not, I don't think, as much as people think. I think that the way that we get information has changed tremendously. Influencers, Twitch streams, like that's all vastly different from how we experienced news
True.
coverage
True.
at the
True.
time.
True.
But Nintendo Power was a mouthpiece for Nintendo, and your EGMs and your Game Pros and your PC gamers, um, they were also at the mercy of game marketing departments too. Sometimes, like I remember, it was either EGM or Game Pro had a whole series that Acclaim was feeding them on Bubsy claws encounters of the third kind for Super Nintendo and Genesis, and I can't remember what else it came out on. But months of coverage of the behind the scenes of them making this game, months of coverage, and it was a mediocre game when it came out. Like it wasn't. Everyone was saying it was like a Mario killer, and it was going to be the prettiest game that ever came out. And it comes out, and that magazine like just sort of swept it under the rug. It's like, okay, pretend that we didn't like hype this game up for the next couple of months. We're not saying don't buy it, but we're saying maybe like read some other reviews before you do. We had very limited access growing up. We did not have a lot of we do not have the same kind of coverage on how games are made. In Nintendo Power, you would just see that a game was coming out in Japan in like a month, and then you wouldn't hear about it for another 2 years, and then it would just be out in the States. Like it was weird. The industry was a lot different back then. Now everyone has access to everything, and there's coverage everywhere. And the moment that something is, the moment that someone thinks up something, it's announced with a press release and some concept art. And it's very different now than it was before.
True. I always joke with this, by the way, that when I really started to like and be passionate about writing, because I wrote poems and books as well, and I love writing. It really grew in me that I appreciate writing, and I felt like when I went into writing articles about video games, I always were joking about this and still do, that like games and all these like media and forms of art, in my opinion, we should call them forms of art as for video games. I'm mentioning like we should review them like we did that in school for poems, right? Like we never gave scores for poems, in my opinion. We just analyzed it, right, to understand what's behind the curtain. And I think that I remember when I was a kid here in Hungary, all the video game magazines were like that. So I remember magazine called Playzone. It was in Hungarian language, and it never gave scores to video games. It was just, talking about the positive and negative side, but it never like wanted you to buy or either not buy the game. And I think that's the real problem with nowadays, like media outlets and streamers and YouTubers and all the content creators who are like wanting you to either buy or either not buy the game. And I think it's really like the better option for them if they wanting you to buy it, because like they are trying to give their positive opinion. But if they are not trying or they are trying you to offend for not buying it, or saying saying you that you shouldn't buy it, then it's like they're closing your option for having your own opinion, right? So you will be ending up this sheep crowded person who just listening to the public and all these content creators, which sucks, because in my opinion, for those people who are already adults and not kids and having their own money on the table, being able to buy a video game, they should validate their opinion and have their opinion for what they should buy and play. Like it's
Yeah, I
freedom,
mean,
right? And it's freedom, but we
yeah,
don't have freedom because all these people are telling us what should we do and what should we not enjoy. And that's the crazy part, because here in Hungary, and I believe in all of other countries in the world, it's crazy out there. If you like something that a lot of people didn't, they will cancel you. Like you're a stupid person. Like why
mm,
you're paying? I remember myself playing Conquered, and I loved that game, and I always bringing up this that people hated Conquered. A lot of people, when I played it and streamed it, people hated me too because they were saying that, oh, okay, there is a transgender character in it. Okay,
mm,
okay, fine, but what about like Baldur's Gate 3, right? Like you could have sex with transgender characters in that game, and nobody complained about it. And it was the
yeah.
game of the year, right? And I love both games, but why people compare like one game having a problem with transgender character, one transgender character, and in
Mhm.
Baldur's Gate you can even make tons of those characters, right? And nobody had a
Yeah.
problem with it, and you could even have sex with those characters.
Yeah. I
It's
think,
crazy.
yeah, I think that the way that we uh, talk about art is broken, like fundamentally
True,
broken.
true, true, true,
Um,
true, true.
it's in a lot of ways it generally has always been a little reductive to review like a film and give it like a thumbs up or a
True,
thumbs down.
true, true,
Um,
true.
and even like Siskel and Ebert would say, that's just our recommendation. Like we're not saying don't go see
Exactly,
this or don't go
exactly.
watch this.
But people
It's
forget to say this, right? Nowadays,
That's the thing. Yeah,
especially.
it's
Yeah,
exactly like I can't think of too many instances where someone said like, "Do not go see this movie," but I see a lot of people say, "Do not play this game.
true.
You shouldn't play this game." And you know, I don't think that that's helpful. I think that people should be informed, and I think that we have so many people whose jobs it is to tell us whether they enjoyed a game or not.
Exactly. They
Um,
are getting paid for
and
this. That's
yeah,
the
they're
problem.
they're they're getting they're getting paid for it. And to some extent, like even back in the old days of games journalism, like they got review copies too. Um, I liked EGM because they had multiple reviewers take on a game, and you would see, like, oh, Crispin gave this, a 7 out of 10, but like, oh, Sushi X gave this one a 3 out of 10. Like, what? Like, they really disagreed about that. That's the stuff I like. I like it when people don't
Exactly.
don't
Like
agree
you
on
have
things.
more perspective and you can choose which is closer to you. Exactly.
Yeah, and publishers don't like it when one person gives it a 10 and one person gives it a 1, because then that averages out to a 5 on your Steam review, and that doesn't help anyone. They really love having that overwhelmingly positive score, and
That's why I
I can
always say
appreciate
that
that.
this should not have any scores now, because I read
I
about
Yeah,
it. A lot of magazines do not want to have scores, but they still do. Like the market needs it, but it's stupid because all these. Sorry for saying this. I know it will be harsh for saying this, but all these ADHD people, they're just getting down to the bottom of the article and watching the score and not even reading the review. It's stupid, right?
I don't know if it's even. I don't even know if it's that. I think that
I
there's
think
just
it
so
is
much
because
out there.
I remember myself like promoting my articles to my community or to anyone who I know, and they were like just checking the scores. They were lazy to read. People nowadays are lazy to read. A lot of them.
I mean, in other people's defense, though, I mean, we were just talking about how there's so many games coming out. There's so much stuff out there,
True,
and it's all a time investment.
true,
Like
true, true,
a lot of people like only play Fortnite now, and
true,
or they'll play like one game. They're
true,
playing WoW, or they're playing Guild
true,
Wars, or they're playing Final Fantasy,
true,
and
true, 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 true,
it
true,
is it is a time investment on their part. It's not like going to see a movie where it's like an hour and a half, 2 hours of their time,
true, true,
and
true, 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 very true.
so I can see both sides of it. I can see
No,
that
I see that too.
there's
It's just like
yeah.
I
I
feel
think that
like
the way we talk about it though is the thing. Like it's not
yeah, true,
really
true, true,
that there's a score or not a score. It's what the score is, and how you're interrogating the thing that you just
true,
experienced.
true,
Uh,
true, very true.
so like you're talking about poetry before. I think that the language that we use to talk about poetry is not like oh yeah,
Yeah,
this
exactly.
this poem,
Sucks.
this oh, it absolutely sucks.
One
Never
out
read
of
it.
10.
0 out of 10.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on, yeah. A path splits in the forest. I don't understand what this is all about.
This
Um,
sucks. I don't want to read it anymore.
yeah, and like for what it's worth, there were people in that era who were just shit posting about poetry. Like that was what people would do.
True.
And in every era that has had some new
True.
kind of
True.
art,
True. True.
there is a whole subculture that spawns around
True.
criticizing and critiquing that art
True.
for a mass audience. And this is what we have now. It is so easy for any person on this world to communicate with
Exactly.
thousands of people around the world with no barrier whatsoever
True.
aside from your internet connection. And so it is going to get louder. And you're gonna, if you want the stuff that you're talking about, we have long form internet videos. We have genuine interrogations on games. They're rarer and they're not as easy to find. They're certainly not as popular as like a 10-minute IGN review, but they're there. They're there.
True. True. True.
I'll find a video that says like, "Hey, the Order 1886 is a misunderstood masterpiece. Like, I want to read that, or I want to watch that."
True.
And there are, every once in a while, like you'll get something like the groundswell of support for like Alien Isolation and like think pieces about how that actually was a really good game and it didn't deserve like a 5.9 out of 10 from IGN. And eventually the groundswell will lead to like, hey, you know what? The guy who directed Alien Romulus actually really loves Alien Isolation, and that movie did well, and so now we're doing an Alien Isolation sequel. 10 years after the fact. Sweet. Sometimes that happens, and it's just because every once in a while people have they'll genuinely interrogate the stuff that they interact with, and they'll dig deep into it, and they'll come up with interesting opinions. And for all the other people who just want to know if the new Resident Evil is as good as other Resident Evils, like thumbs up, thumbs down, like cool. Like sometimes I don't need to know more than that before I play it. So yeah, it depends on what you're looking for. And these days, very much like the games that we play, there's something out there for everyone.
True. True. Very true. Okay, going back to your game again. Sorry for having
Yeah,
another
we
topic,
went
not
deep.
about the game, but thank you for your honesty again. So,
Yeah, of
going
course.
back to your game, what's the release date goal? If it's public or
So the way that we talk about it is that once we are able to secure full funding for the game, it's probably about 2 years out. So we're having conversations with all sorts of people about how we're going to fund it. As you can imagine, the hand-drawn animations are a bottleneck for us financially, but once we're able to figure that out, 2 years.
okay, okay. What about the platforms? Is it going to be only available on PC, or are you planning to release it on other platforms as well?
We want to release it on as many platforms as we can.
Okay.
We're targeting Steam right now. You can wishlist it on Steam right now. That is our sort of target platform, but we want to release it on Nintendo Switch or whatever the successor to Switch is. PlayStation, Xbox Series. Like we want to hit as many platforms as we can. We're developing it in Unity, and our technical director is really good at porting to different hardware. So we're very excited to explore all the new platforms.
Okay. Okay. And so, as a person, you as a person who appreciates the old school era games, if you remember those times, of course, they had this, physical editions and collector's editions. Are you planning to
Mhm.
have one out of your game as well, like for
I
us
can't
players to be able
imagine.
to buy?
I cannot imagine releasing an adventure game these days and not having a physical version of it in a big box. Like I love. Like
Yeah,
I
I
have a
see
whole
that.
bunch
Yeah,
down there.
love that. Love
I've
that.
got all the Quest for Glories and some Space Quest and Mist and Trespasser right over there. Speaking of Trespasser,
Nice.
but you know they're expensive to make. They'd be a limited edition thing probably if we do like a crowd fund for some reason. Whether that's the way that we fund it or that's some special thing that we decide to do. Um, a big box release would be imperative for me. I don't think that it would feel like the game is actually done until it's in a big box with some cool extras for people to go through.
I see. I see. Okay, so going back to a question what I wanted to ask earlier in the interview, I just
Mm-hmm.
missed this question asking. So, uh, how does the story of the comic and the game is connected?
So they take place at the same time,
Okay,
but they are parallel stories that
okay,
do not intersect. We wanted to make sure that people did not feel a need to catch up on the comic story, which has been going
I
on
see.
for, like I said, a very long time. We want them to be interested in the world and to learn about it naturally through the game. So uh, they they do not intersect in a way that would require you to catch up on, multiple volumes of comic story.
I see. I see. We also were talking about that you like didn't had to like sacrifice your own vision since you were in this position of a box realizing what you can and what you can't do, but were there some things in or as for your game that you had to cut out from your game during the development process of it?
I mean, there are various sort of set piece moments that, I would think of that I wanted to do, and then I would budget them out in a spreadsheet and realize that, like, oh man, it would cost me this much to do this. That's the nice thing with hand drawn animation, is that every second costs, a very real amount of money. And so you can just sort of imagine the scene playing out in your head and then write down that number and be like, that's a very large number. Don't think we should do that. So there were a lot of those moments. And uh, that's part of designing in a box, right? It's that, if you had unlimited budget, you could do whatever you want, but it's the fact that you don't have an unlimited budget that you have to come up with interesting ways to make your dollar stretch. And so that led us to a lot of the direction that we're moving in now.
I see. And were there times when you could like go back to those scenes and still have those scenes put into your game? Like when you
Um,
realize that okay, I still need those scenes back in my game, or
well,
never?
the way that the game is designed and structured, it is kind of modular. So we could, if things happened and we could, piece things in, we probably could do stuff like that. But
I see.
at the point that we have already sort of completed those scenes and gotten the pacing right, I feel like I would rather take whatever new assets we could do and make the experience bigger in other ways.
I see. I see. Okay. So more personal question would be again from me. So what would be the ultimate core message of your game if you would happen to like summarize or some the message of
Yeah.
your game
So
story, of course.
yeah, the character arc is a journey of understanding for people and cultures that are not our own.
I see.
That is a central message for the comics too. But because we have multiple protagonists in the comic, we can tackle a bunch of different stories. In the game, we only have a single protagonist, and so we focus on a single character arc. And she begins as a courier, a messenger who has never left her homeland before, and she's tasked with going to a neighboring kingdom, um, and finds herself trapped in this neighboring kingdom just as war is declared against her own people. And so she's trapped in enemy territory with no friends and no allies. And so she has to, reach out to all of these people that she, had these, ideas in her head that, they could be trusted, or, she didn't want anything to do with them. And that growth, that sort of understanding and coming to terms with that is part of her arc, learning that we are stronger together than we are alone, and uh, you know exploring cultures beyond your own is a fascinating and humbling experience. And for our protagonist, it helps her grow as a character. Uh, and that journey takes the whole of the game. So we're very excited to explore all the nuances of that and how all the different non player characters can help her sort of interrogate that story arc.
I see. I see. Thank you for that. Do you believe, by
Yeah.
the way, that this message, this core message that your game story has, is also important for you as well in your everyday life?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you know, working in any creative field, we're encouraged to adopt multiple points of view and to understand where other creators are coming from. No singular vision ever really sort of makes it from beginning to end. All these other people have opportunities to add ideas to it to help improve it. And I can't think of a single thing that I have ever done where another person made it worse by suggesting something. Even if someone made a bad suggestion, it helped me reinforce the things that were good
I see.
about my original suggestion. So working on a team will often help you discover things that you did not realize were needed improvement.
I see.
It helps you understand your own weaknesses as a creator. Um, and if you isolate yourself in a bubble and you never come to terms with these things, you never grow. Uh, so I think that conflict is, and by conflict I mean just putting yourself out there and having other people interrogate who you are and
Sorry.
interrogate your ideas. That's all right. Helps you grow as a person, and uh, I don't think that I would be doing what I do and enjoying it as much if I didn't have other people to help me along the way.
I see. Do you think like you always had this mentality about life, or is it something that you developed throughout your life?
It's something that I think everyone develops over time. I think
Okay.
that we are naturally as humans. I think that this is just a thing that we begin. And I mean, I grew up in a pre-internet world, so that's something that was very literal in my case. Is that if you wanted to learn about the world outside your
You have to go
sphere,
out there.
you had to go out there, or you had
Just
to watch
don't just click.
documentaries,
Yeah,
or
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, it was very different back then. Now, from the earliest of age, you can open up a series of YouTube videos about different cultures all around the world.
True, true, true. But it's not
There
the
are,
same experience, right? So it's like
no,
very
certainly not.
different.
It's very different, and I think that you have to want to explore and experience
True.
other cultures, and I think
That's the
that
passion
opens
in
your
us.
mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way that we see the world and live it every day, and the assumptions that we make. Other people in other parts of the world are having those exact same moments, but
True,
their
true,
assumptions are very different from ours, and the way that they perceive the world is very different from us. And I think that as a storyteller and someone who builds characters, that's fascinating to me because how we see the world is fundamentally different. But we're all people, and we're all trying to live our lives. And I think that
true,
those similarities, you know, that make us who we are,
true,
as people. It's important to understand that, and I think that it makes us better storytellers as well.
true, true. Very true. Do you believe, by the way, in perfect synergy as for finding team members?
Um, I mean, it's possible.
Okay.
I don't believe that it
Or
is
it's
an
something that you
imperative
develop
to.
up as well?
Yeah, and I think that it is a relationship that's built over time,
Okay.
and sometimes you get extraordinarily lucky and you find like just the right person for just the right role, and sometimes it's a little bit trickier, and that relationship can be a little rocky sometimes. But overall, I think that if your goals are aligned in that you want to make the best possible thing, that it is possible to work together, even though you don't agree on other things.
I see. And that's for your team members. Was it hard to find them? How do you feel about that?
Uh, No.
Okay.
So I mean, Rachel and I have known each other for a very long time.
I see.
Mike Smith, our technical director, came up to us at Emerald City Comic Con when we were, doing the comic,
Okay.
um, and he introduced himself and was like, "Hey, if you guys ever want to make a game based on this, I'd love to help you out." And we're like, "Oh, well, cool." And that was really, I think, one of the core reasons that we decided to start pursuing with the zeal that we started to pursue it,
I
the
see.
game, because we knew that we had someone who really understood Unity and how to code. Nolan Markey, our composer, also came to us, just as a fan of the comic, and wrote us some music. And we were like, this guy is way too good for just some random fan. Let me
Hmm.
put his name into Google. Oh, he has an IMDb page. Oh, he's worked on Star Wars. Okay, cool. He's like a professional film orchestrator and composer, film and TV and games. So, and then he introduced us to our sound designer, Lucas Faring, who, again, was like immediately understood the assignment. Um, and Patrick Stannard and his Knights of the Light Table crew. I also met Patrick, as a as an acquaintance online in college, and we talked back and forth a little bit, and then he went on to become this incredible animator working at Powerhouse Studios, working on stuff like Castlevania and Epic Mickey and all these things, and Power of Two, Epic Mickey Power of Two, and he founded this Knights of the Light Table studio that was perfect for the animation that we wanted to do, and it actually worked out just fine. So yeah, like the team kind of fell into place. Like we knew. I want to say that it's almost like the game. The game is a product of the size of the team, and the size of the team is a product of the size of the game. So it's almost like everything just
Makes sense.
perfectly locked into
Yeah,
place.
yeah, like a Lego piece, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Nice, nice, nice. Okay, we touched here a lot of topics. Are you down to go some and answer some questions from my chat and community?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. Oh, there is a question. Okay, already. Okay. Okay, let me translate it. Okay, so Minnie is saying that she's at work, but she quickly checked out your game's Steam page, and it's a very cute game for her to see. Oh, she loves that the protagonist is not the common animal of a choice. That it's a rare choice and a unique choice of having
a squirrel protagonist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and she's saying that the music, the art style, and the whole universe that you are bringing with your game shines this calm feeling of those stories that she used to read as a kid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, we were very much inspired
Oh, it's
by.
not a question. Sorry.
No, that's fine. It really was inspired by things like the Redwall books. Animated films from the 70s and the 80s, Disney's Robin Hood, The Secret of Nim, Dragon's Lair. Not a film, but still Don Bluth animation. There's a certain coziness to that genre of storytelling. That kind of Euro fable, hand drawn animals with swords kind of thing. A lot of people are recognizing that it is a very potent style to pursue. Just within the last 6 months, you've had Bloomborough, Sunderfolk, and uh, uh, Hawthorne all sort of coming out, and it's a lot of people have very strong feelings about it, and the creative team of the game and the comic, myself included, absolutely do. It's one of the reasons why we're doing it, is that we think that it is a very potent vibe that we want to explore and make as real and interactive as possible for people.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that your viewer didn't catch the name.
Minnie, sorry. Yeah,
Minnie.
Minnie Mouse. Yeah.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
I'm very glad that you're enjoying what you see. Thank you for checking it out.
She also wrote that at the first seconds of the trailer of the game that is available on Steam page. The shining light represents in the forest. The shining light represents for her the hope, like the symbol of hope for her.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. No, it is. I'll say as a brief aside, learning how to do that particle effect was a very good day for me. But in terms of the symbolism, yeah, like I think that there is something about how light was handled in a lot of those early animated films where they would literally bleed light through animation cells. Um, it just looks very different from how light is simulated now in
True,
other
true, true.
3D films. Um, that just trying even if it's just like a little glimpse to try and recapture that feeling. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
True, true. Do you feel like you really found yourself by ending your self doubt and really go into full of chasing your dreams, making your own
I think
game, writing the comics?
I mean there's always doubt, but
Yeah, I know that. I
I
know that.
think
I was just
it
joking
is
around, but
no, it's a very good question. I think that you always need to have a little bit of doubt.
okay,
You
it's
always
true.
I
It's
think
true.
that it keeps you humble.
True. True. Like the
And
box you said, right?
yeah, I never like I've seen too many horror stories of developers and creators, not just game developers, but like filmmakers and musicians and writers who, thought that they could do no wrong, and
And they did.
like Icarus, like flew too close to the sun.
Sorry.
I never want to assume that something that I do is going to be good. I always want to earn that respect from the people that
I see.
I am making art for. I need to enjoy what I'm doing, and I do, which is great. But when I put something out there, I never think that it's good. I just think that it's done. And
But you
whether
always have this
people,
feeling of your vision that it's going to deliver, right? Or hopefully you
it's
have.
it is less about whether it will deliver and more, am I going to do the thing that I set out to do?
I see.
Um, it is a very particular mania that I suffer from, where it is not so much whether the thing I'm making is going to be like a huge hit. It's more, am I like I have this vision in my head for how it looks. Am I going to and I need to make this thing.
True, true, true.
Am I going to make this thing? And along the way, a lot of people see it and they get very excited about it, and that makes me feel good because it means that my vision is aligned with a lot of other people's
True, true,
expectations.
true, true, true.
But when I put the thing out there, the thing that I'm really sort of, thinking about is like, okay, like I did the thing. Uh, it's the thing that I wanted to make. Do other people connect with it or not? Um, do other people like it? I I know that there are some people who get disappointed that people don't experience the things that they make on the creator's terms. Um, if someone enjoys a thing that I made for reasons that I don't understand, I'm still going to be happy about it because my goal is to bring other people joy and to bring other people, entertainment. Um, and if I'm able to get the thing out there that I made, and I made it the way that I wanted to make it, and I did not make any compromise or sacrifice to get the thing out there that I wanted to make, and other people enjoy it, that's like the best. It's the best possible outcome.
True.
Um, you know, if I put a thing out there that I, that I made, and I made it exactly as I wanted to make it, and nobody likes it, some people will say that that won't bother them. I think that that would bother me because that to me would just say like, okay, like, at some point I lost track of, it's like people were excited about it before. Why aren't they excited about it now? What happened? Um, I always try to keep that alignment because at the end of the day, I'm trying to entertain people. I'm trying to entertain people with
True,
my
true,
stories.
true, true,
Trying to entertain myself while I'm doing it.
true.
Um, so yeah, it's a complicated relationship that I have with the things that I make. But it's all just to tell fun stories and entertain people, and if people learn something along the way, then that's great.
I see.
That's that's the end of it, really.
Thank you for that. Okay, so my closing question would be like, how do you feel about your future? Like, are you like planning to make other games? other than this
Yeah, I
one
mean,
as well, or
I don't see any world where I'm not making games.
okay.
You know, I just can't. I started writing film scripts, and I enjoy writing film scripts, but I still enjoy making games, and I can't. I wouldn't stop doing one for the other. I still enjoy working at ArenaNet. I still enjoy my day job, so I could see making other kinds of games. I've always wanted to make as a writer, this is folly, but I've always wanted to make an old school, deathmatch shooter, that has no story whatsoever, but
We miss
I just
those,
want
right?
to, yeah,
we
I want to make
we
I
have
want to
these
make a game like that.
extraction shooters and battle royales, which are fine, and I love them
They're
too. But
fun.
I miss the arena shooters and TDM games. Yeah, true, 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 true.
Yeah,
Very true.
I want to do that. I want to make a survival horror game with hand drawn 2D backgrounds like Resident Evil. Um, I want to do that. There are all kinds of games that I want to make, all kinds of experiences that I
And
want
I
to
hope
make.
we
I
will
want
do.
to. I also hope that. And it really just depends on does Sunsgrove Studios' first game, War of the Western Deep, does it resonate with people? Does our
I'm sure
approach
it
to
will. I'm sure
making
it will.
games?
By the way,
Hey,
and I think
fingers crossed.
yeah, and I think that all the unique aspects of your game twisted and mixed into one game is also with very thing that will
I really
resonate with people. In my opinion.
I appreciate that. I hope it will too. I personally hope that it resonates with a publisher at some point and they help us get it across the finish line. But if not, we'll probably do a crowdfund campaign. To game budgets are so much bigger than comic Kickstarters that we've done before. So we would probably downscope the game a little bit for a minimum, a small amount, and then if the crowdfund does well, then append more and more stuff. Okay, the first version was for this much, and it has this many enemy types, and it's got this many scenes. But if we make this much, we can add more enemy types and more scenes and more puzzles and more characters. And
I see.
that's the if we can't find anyone to help us publish this game in 11 months, we'll probably explore something like that. So we'll see.
I hope you will do. I hope you will do, and if we'll find the right publisher, because yeah,
we'll see. Sometimes the fans, have to help. That was
true.
What Double Fine had to do for Broken Age, and for better or for worse. But it did help bring adventure games back into the mainstream, and it did help, make crowdfunding a real choice for a lot of developers, including Larian. So, it's a direction. We're going to explore every possible one that we can to get this game out the door.
Nice. Thank you for your honesty, and thank you that you joined us for today's episode. And like I said, I'm very honored that you were here, and with your honesty, I appreciate that. Thank you. And like I said, I will need some more of your minutes, but for those who are watching us, thanks for tuning in late or early, depending where you live. And yeah, thanks for checking out our live interview, and for those who will watch the VOD or the edited version later on YouTube and on Twitch, thanks you for those as well. And yeah, thank you for the question, by the way, or the comment, sorry, from Minnie as well. Thank you, and thank you.
A comment, not a question.
Yeah,
true,
and the response as well. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day or night, depending where you live. Bye. And marketing time. Don't forget to wish us the game. Please do that.
It's called War of the Western Deep. It's on Steam. You can follow us on Twitter and Blue Sky. And
do that. Don't forget to do that.